Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Wednesday night. It's lovely to have you in for another episode of the Prime Time program. We talked about all offseason long offensive line investment, how much work they needed to do to get this situation right. One of the worst pass protecting units in all of professional football in 2023. Andre Dillard, the root of all evil, cast aside and on his way to Green Bay. All these different things transpired and culminated in the Titans' first-round draft pick. Some could argue that the offensive line situation was as big a reason as any that got Mike Vrabel fired. And with the addition of Bill Callahan, the Titans' offensive line situation is as optimistic as it has been since Taylor Lewan, Roger Saffold, Ben Jones, and that group of players were pretty close to, if not the best run blocking offensive line unit in football back in, I want to say 2019, en route to the AFC Championship. Probably wasn't the best group, actually, that the Titans had because, weirdly enough, Josh Klein and Quentin Spain had a moment in 2017 when DeMarco Murray was the AFC's leading rusher. But even still, it's tough to have the best offensive line unit in the sport for a sustained period of time, which is what we're going to talk tonight about with JC Latham and Bill Callahan, because any concerns that you had about JC Latham should be tossed aside just the way that you tossed Andre Dillard aside to hear the foremost expert in the NFL going right now, not named Mike Munchak, talk about JC Latham. We're going to get to that over the course of tonight's show. As always, we appreciate when you share the broadcast on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. No matter where you're hanging out with us, make sure you share the broadcast. If you're hanging out on Twitter, retweet it in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Facebook Live, you can share now to public. And if you're hanging out on YouTube, like the video as you're strolling on in here and subscribe to the channel while you're at it. Amar says, Bill, big Coach Callahan. Yes, Ran and some members of the Titans staff, coaching, front office, some of the players call Bill big coach. Big coach. They don't call Brian little coach, but they call Bill big coach. And at this point, I think there is a lot of meaning to that in more ways than one, with big Bill Callahan coming to town and trying to get this offensive line group at least functional. Now, the question is the offensive line unit actually going to be good? Because that is at the core of the question. Are they going to be more than serviceable? Are they actually going to be a good offensive line unit in 2024? I'm a little slower on that than I am having a level of trust, a great level of trust in Bill Callahan to at least get the group serviceable, right? Now, I think they have great potential, but it's going to be a slower process than just Bill has arrived, so everything is fixed. My colleague at 104.5 The Zone, Ron Slay, calls him offensive line Jesus, and while he's probably not far from it, it's fair to allow a little time before they immediately flip this thing. And God knows it needs to be flipped, but they're very much still in process of that. So tonight we're going to talk about JC Latham. What is your level of concern, scale of 1 to 10, with JC Latham as the starting right tackle for the Tennessee Titans in 2024? Perhaps you have zero concerns whatsoever. Perhaps you have just a little bit of doubt in the back of your mind about a player that we haven't seen put the pads on yet, other than his entire career at Alabama, where you know he's a certified ass kicker. But for JC Latham, I think that there is still just generally some underlying tone from some of the fan base that wonders or that says to themselves, I would just simply like to know definitively that the player that we have can play left tackle. And I don't think that you can say that definitively yet. Now, is there any doubt in my mind? Well, we'll get into it over the course of tonight's show, because that is the Two Rivers Ford take for this evening on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. It is presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Two Rivers Ford always goes above and beyond just like this month where they're offering you $8,000 off your 2024 Ford Expedition. Only for the month of June and only at Two Rivers Ford, where they always sell all their new non-specialty Ford vehicles below MSRP. Go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. Right tackle or left tackle, Stephen King says. You said right tackle. I apologize. I meant left tackle because, of course, the left tackle is the position that he's going to play. The right tackle is the position that he played coming out of Alabama. So forgive me if I had a slip of the tongue. David Lee says the offensive scheme makes the pass blocking better. No more run, pass. So here's where David's right. The Titans, in the 6-year period that Mike Vrabel was the head coach, the Titans led the league in run rate, in rushing rate. Led the league. Wasn't even close. Now, of course, why would they do that beyond Mike Vrabel being the head coach? Derrick Henry on the roster means that's your best play. Now, could it have been better? Could it have been more diverse? Yes. When they had A.J. Brown, it was. When they had Corey Davis, it was. And when both of those players left and Jonnu Smith was gone and they lost all semblance of a functioning offensive line, things went to hell very, very quickly. No speed bumps whatsoever. Straight to hell. No speed bumps for the last 2 seasons, and that's what you've been trying to gut out. So that they stayed with that philosophy, and I talked about this. If you didn't listen to Nate Tice's appearance on the radio show on what was yesterday, Tuesday. It was yesterday. If you didn't hear Nate Tice's appearance on the radio show about the kind of system that Brian Callahan's going to run, you're going to be surprised with how much they run the football. Truly, you're going to be surprised. If you look at some of the most harsh criticisms of Zach Taylor, and by extension, then Brian Callahan, one the play calling head coach, one the non-play calling offensive coordinator, one of the most harsh criticisms before the year they went to the Super Bowl, and of course Joe Burrow, a big part of that, was that they were too uncreative with the offense, that they were running the ball too much on first down, all those kind of things. A lot of similar themes to what you're talking about getting away from. You're still going to run the ball. Now, I don't know if one player is going to get 25 to 30 carries a game. In fact, I know that one player is not going to get 25 to 30 carries a game. But how often do they get the running backs touches, and how often and how many different ways do they get the running backs touches? We talked to Randy Jordan about that earlier this week. In fact, I guess this was all yesterday. Yesterday was a long day. So I feel like it's been an entire week in one single day, talking to all of the offensive and defensive assistant coaches before we broke for the summer after practice and media availability. Anyway, I think that when you look at the rushing success rate of 3 of the 5 years that the Bengals had Joe Burrow. So 2019 was Brian Callahan and Zach Taylor's first year on the job, and the Bengals were terrible. Had number one overall pick. They draft Joe Burrow. The offense gets better. Joe Burrow gets hurt, though, pretty deep into the season, misses the rest of his rookie year, and they struggle in 2020. But their rushing success rate gets better every year until last season, where Joe Burrow, again, spends a good deal of time on the injured reserve list with both I want to say it wasn't a thigh that Joe Burrow was dealing with, but he had a lower body injury, maybe a calf. I want to say it was a calf that Joe Burrow was dealing with, especially when he and the Cincinnati Bengals came to Tennessee and got their asses kicked by the Titans. That was Joe Burrow's last bad calf game. Then he had the issue with the wrist, and of course that ruled him out for the rest of the year. But every year, the rushing success rate got better and better and better in Cincinnati because they're going to run the ball. They're just trying to spread things out, so it's easier to run the football, and that's the thing where the Titans have been caught up in. You can't spread things out because you don't have the personnel to do so. Now the personnel has significantly changed, and it's not like, I'm not going to say objectively they're better for not having Derrick Henry, but I do think that they can stand to be a lot more creative the way that many of you want them to be without Derrick Henry on the roster. Anyway, let's keep it moving. The part of this, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's my level of concern about JC Latham as the left tackle starting for this team in week 1 of 2024? I'll tell you it's a 4. I'll tell you it's a 4 right now. I'm not going to middle of the road you. I'm not going to fence it and say a 5. It's either a 4 or a 6 as far as I'm concerned, and I'm closer to a 4 than I am a 6. Now, there's a couple of different reasons for that, and I'll explain to you here in just a second, right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by Zen Sports. Up to $100 on your no danger first wager. NBA Finals Game 3 about to start. It is not too late for you to get your bets in at Zen Sports. Promo code ATOZTN. Terms and conditions do apply. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 plus and in the state of Tennessee to bet at Zen Sports. So I'm a 4. Here's why. They haven't put pads on yet. I reserve the larger part of my judgment about any offensive lineman until such time as they put pads on and can actually do the things that offensive linemen are going to get close to doing in live game action. There is the idea that he's still learning a new position, and I do think JC Latham is a considerably better and higher level athlete than was Peter Skoronski as a first-round pick. And it's not a huge difference, or may not seem like a huge difference from 7 to 11, where they were both selected. But there is a substantial difference in their skill set. JC Latham is equipped to play left tackle in the NFL. Peter Skoronski is not as equipped to play left tackle in the NFL. It's why every coaching staff, the last 2 coaching staffs, the current coaching staff and the previous coaching staff that he's worked with, both have said exclusively he's a guard. Now, Peter's a really smart guy. He's a really high-level player. I think he has great potential because you see it even when he was, working through all the issues. He wasn't good last year. He was objectively bad last year. And I don't think that he should be immune from criticism. Certainly not. He was objectively bad last year. I think we can all agree that Peter Skoronski was a bad player on a bad offensive line last year, even if there are reasons for it. Now, do I think that he can achieve at a much higher level with much more competency around him? I absolutely do. And Peter, with me on the radio show yesterday, or I guess that was, I can't remember where that was, when did we play the Peter Skoronski interview? I want to say it was Friday on the radio show. Either way, I sat down with Peter at mandatory minicamp last week. We talked about the level of comfort and confidence that he's carrying himself with, because he's just that much more relaxed, because he's just got to focus on playing one position, no longer a new position to him, and he can settle in. And he's got JC Latham and Lloyd Cushenberry on either side of him, which means stock the hell up. Now, does that outright alleviate all of my concerns about JC Latham? No, because I want to see it first. Offensive linemen, when they're rookies, are going to struggle no matter how good they are. I think this one's going to be pretty good. Is he going to get his ass kicked a couple of times this season? Yeah, probably more than a couple of times. That's a completely fair expectation. But he's got the right support system in place. He's got good pieces, good enough pieces around him that I think it's going to help, rising tide lifts all ships, right? That's kind of the state of the Titans offensive line group right now. And if for nothing else, I'll just take Bill Callahan and his word about it.
How is JC different from when you first got your first look at him in person on the practice field to now, as you compare to, not see him again on the field for a while?
What's interesting about rookies when you first get them, their rate of improvement kind of jumps early, because they're given so much information. They're given a lot of new tools. So, good athletes like JC adapts really fast. So you can see his improvement over the course of the last few weeks that we've had him. So that's a real positive. Although, there's a lot of things he's still learning and needs to get better at, and he's working towards that. So it's always a work in progress when you first get a guy like him. And I think nothing really comes to fruition until you're in training camp and everything's live. The speed's faster, the looks are quicker, nobody's pulling off of blocks, so you're going to have to finish blocks. So it becomes a little more different, obviously, when you get into that phase of preseason.
What do you like about Ojukwu and Charles, the guys who are fighting for spots on the right side of that line? What are they showing you? I know it's early because you don't have the pads on and all, but.
Well, first things first, and that would be the classroom. They've got tremendous passion, studying the game, preparing for each day. They'll get the scripts early, and they'll jump on their iPads at night. They'll text questions in to make sure that they're all on the same page in terms of assignments and adjustments. So they're really into that aspect. They study a lot of their own personal cut-ups that we make for them, and they give feedback to that. So that's always positive. And then just their interaction and how active they are in the meeting room. They're well engaged, really great eye contact. and they just have a real passion for football. So I'm really pleased with the group as a whole. But when you watch guys like Jo, it's really fun to watch him improve and get better with reps.
Good for us with JC. He spent a lot of time extra. He play on his way back in after spending time today. That impressed you? Maybe shows how much it means to him.
He's built a little bit differently from a mental aspect from most first rounders that I've been around. He'll always do the extra. He's always out here every day. Of course, the story about Rand chasing him out of the rain here a couple weeks ago. But he's always doing things to improve his craft, which is fun. It's enjoyable as a coach. You yearn for players like that, in your room, because they're great examples for the other people, for the other guys in the room to learn from. But he's really obsessive about get everything correct. He's a perfectionist that way, so it's fun to watch him go back out on the field and correct something that he wants to get better at.
So that's Bill Callahan speaking with the media yesterday, the last time that we will speak with Titans personnel, staff, coaches, players, or otherwise until July 23rd. Yeah, July 23rd, a few months. About a month and a half from now. Going to be a long summer, but it'll go pretty quickly. And we've got a lot of stuff to keep you guys entertained in the meantime. But some great stuff from Bill Callahan there about the entirety of the group, the right tackle competition, and then JC Latham specifically. Ann Herndon says on YouTube, sounds like Bill Callahan is reinforcing what Skoronski talked about with Lloyd and JC being very cerebral and locked in. Yes, what Ann is referencing is a clip from the Peter Skoronski interview that we played for you at some point here recently, specific to JC Latham and Lloyd Cushenberry and how much Peter Skoronski is already seeing the dividends be paid from that. This was Peter Skoronski on the radio show. You can check the podcast out from last Friday. As it relates to JC, obviously, who you're going to work with primarily, work alongside with, and Lloyd, just I guess how the benefit of the two of them, one who's new to the NFL, obviously, but high-level athlete, obviously a former first-round pick like yourself, and then Lloyd, who was a full, I think he started for his entire rookie season and has been a full-time starter since then, and the invaluable nature of that knowledge, having a center like that to play alongside.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, center is such a cerebral position in a lot of ways, especially in this offense. So it's really good to have someone who's got a lot of experience under their belt and is also just like a really smart, cerebral guy with a really good demeanor. And that's Lloyd. And I think we're lucky to have someone like that in the middle. So yeah, it's a huge help to me as a guard. I think you rely so much on center communication. And I think it'll be a huge help to JC too, because, it goes down the line. So, it's kind of an anchor there in terms of not just physically, but mentally.
That is Peter Skoronski. Again, the full interview also on the 104.5 The Zone YouTube channel. So while you're here on the A to Z YouTube channel, if that's where you're streaming us, make sure you like the video. Thank you very much for doing so. And then subscribe to 104.5 The Zone on YouTube, where you can get my radio show and all the interviews that we do with Titans players. I heard Will Levis is going to be in studio with 3HL for a whole hour, I think next week, as a matter of fact. So I'd keep an eye out for that as well. Another big reason to subscribe to 104.5 The Zone on YouTube, not just for me, because I appreciate when you guys subscribe for me, but for the entire radio station, because there's some really good stuff all up and down the lineup. Chosen says, Buck, any word on how Cole Spencer is coming out? He's the UDFA offensive tackle out of Texas Tech. Yes, I'm familiar with him. He's a guard, or at least he'll be a guard here. Just curious if he has done well in OTAs. So I'll be honest, we haven't asked about him. He's not really stood out. And let me say, when I say that he hasn't stood out to me in a meaningful way, that shouldn't come off as a knock against him. Only to say that in watching the offensive line, I must admit to you that I'm much more focused on the top line guys, because there's a lot of new top line guys as well. Throughout the course of training camp, we'll probably focus more in on the UDFA guys, but since we're just getting to know a lot of the new ones who are going to be starters as well, I will tell you that it's not like I've noticed a difference in his rep count or anything like that. He seems to be factoring in potentially for depth. I'm sure that he is, I'm sure that for the Titans, it's good to have options. And they again added an option today. Forgive me, I'm forgetting the player's name from Cleveland who they signed. I'll pull up my email really quickly and I can tell you. I want to say it's Jerron Christian. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yes, Jerron Christian, who started 9 games for the Cleveland Browns last year, spending time with Houston, Washington, 6-year NFL veteran. He's not very good, or at least wasn't very good last year for the Cleveland Browns, but still familiarity with Bill Callahan and additional tackle depth. Good to just churn the bottom of the roster that way. And that's kind of where Cole Spencer, I would put him right now. Just because he hasn't shown out or showed up notably shouldn't be a knock against him, right? And again, my perspective may be much different than, and I'm sure is much different than the offensive line coaching staff's perspective, who are with him in the meeting rooms and who get a different level of understanding of what kind of player he is. So we'll see. Titan Kong says, are you excited for Tennessee Titans football and Will Levis? I am. I think I am. Yeah, I would say I am. Let me put it this way. Because I love football season, right? It's my job. It's the reason that I get up every day and go to work, because it's the most fun job in the world. And to be able to cover professional athletes and professional football games and to be able to travel. And I think I only have like 3 or 4 NFL stadiums on my list to check off yet. I think one of them I'm for sure going to check off this year, Detroit. I've not done a game at Detroit, but still, it's a kick-ass job, right? To be paid to talk into microphones on radio, YouTube, wherever the hell else with the Greg Cosell podcast, all of that stuff. And yeah, it's always exciting to go to work. I will tell you that I'm more excited for a season than I have been in a while, because it's the first time in a long time that it's been different. 6 years, a long time for an NFL coaching staff. And Mike Vrabel and his staffs, while they were here, and the players that were here, there were some definite highs and there were some definite lows. So, things had run its course. And I think now in when the dust is settled largely, it's a lot more understandable for a lot of people who were initially against the firing of Mike Vrabel. I think it was pretty split down the middle with the fan base. And certainly, I'll tell you guys straight up, you guys know this, I did not think he was fired until the Sunday before he got fired. And I want to say he was fired on a Tuesday afternoon. So, you know that I was adamant about it. I didn't think it was going to happen. And then I went to work on Sunday, and, just the excitement of breaking news and stuff like that. Heard Mike Vrabel's getting fired from every person that I talked to, basically, that had any meaningful tie with the organization. And shit rolled downhill fast, right? So it's been an exciting offseason. It's a long way of answering your question. I'm sorry. It's been an exciting offseason. I am more excited than I have been in a while to watch a season of Titans football, because I think that there's a lot of things to look at with the roster and be genuinely curious about. I'm not too shy to tell you when I don't like watching them, because there's been a lot of times in this will be my 8th NFL season. There's been a lot of times in the last 7 seasons where they've looked like shit, and I'd rather cover another team or watch another team or be sitting in a press box and be able to change the channel from the slop that they're producing, because it can be a bit of a grind. I'd like to experience the red zone effect in my life from time to time to make me feel alive again when you get into the depths and slogs of covering a team throughout the course of the season. Because I know, it's a lot of fun, but it does get to be a grind. It's not the same, it's not the same physical grind, obviously, that football players go through, but in the same way that it's a grind on coaches and front office people, it's a grind for us too. And nobody wants to hear that because it's a really great job, but you get my point. So, Chosen says, excited but not a fan of the Titans. Make it make sense, Buck. Well, it's real easy. I like good football. Are you going to be a good football team this year? Maybe. The fact that I don't know definitively that you're going to be a shitty football team this year, yeah, that makes me more excited to cover a football season. If I know you're going to be bad, like I've known you're going to be bad for the past couple of years, then yeah, I'm very happy. I'm very happy when you don't make the playoffs and I get a month off after that, a month off that I don't usually get off. Yeah, I'll take that and run. If I know going into a season that you're going to be shitty, I'd rather that season come to an end as soon as humanly possible. I've had that conversation with Jimmy Wyatt before, where Jim is the model. He's the standard, right? Jimmy is the best person to have covered this team professionally, even as he now works for the team. Prior to that, Jim Wyatt was the best in the business and still is the best in the business. There's no disputing that whatsoever. But you get towards the end of a season like last year and you start to talk amongst yourselves, man, I wish the season would just end the same way that the players do, right? They're trying to go on vacation. They're trying to make their bodies not hurt anymore. And if you're not going anywhere, it sucks. But I think that it's tough for me to wish away parts of a football season because that's the most exciting part. And I do think that sometimes you can take it for granted when you're covering a shitty football team. And then when they start to turn the corner and things start to trend up, yeah, you look at it with a different level of excitement because it's different. There's a lot of new. I'm learning new faces, new people for the first time. It's almost like it's kind of like I wouldn't say like going from high school to college or whatever, where you get to reset to a degree. But it's like if you ever moved around when you were going to school or something like that. If it was an enjoyable move for you, maybe it wasn't to start over at a new school or something like that. But you meet new teachers, new people, new friends, new teammates. If you play sports, those kind of things, and I think this is kind of similar to that. So we'll see. Right now I'm excited. There's no reason to be pessimistic other than your nose tackle who doesn't practice. But I'm sure we'll have plenty of time during training camp to bitch about that if he doesn't show up. Or if he's not on the field when the rest of them are on the field after an entire month of layoff for T'Vondre Sweat. Either way, let's talk NFL storylines. The biggest NFL storylines heading into the offseason. It's not the offseason for everybody. There's still a lot of teams conducting mandatory minicamp until tomorrow, and then we'll have their final week of OTAs next week. But since the Titans had a new coach and started their offseason program early, I think that it's going to feel a little bit longer, even if the rookies are working next week for a 7-week layoff between now and the start of training camp. So what's the biggest offseason storyline right now in the NFL? Could be Titans related if you think that's the biggest storyline. I would be inclined to disagree with you, but perhaps we can have a conversation. On Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, let me know what you think is going to carry the news cycle into the summer. And while you do that, I will remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by TrueMap Fitness in the Gulch. Go to TrueMapFitness.com for your first workout free as a Middle Tennessee resident. No workout ever recycled or repeated. The best in the business is TrueMap Fitness, whether it's the coaching staff, the facility itself, or the workouts, because as I mentioned, they are constantly different, constantly adapting, constantly tailored to your specific level of fitness, because it is for all fitness levels to improve. TrueMapFitness.com. Your first workout is free. So what's going to carry the NFL offseason news cycle? Free agents, says Angelica James. Chris Frazier saying Aaron again, who I assume Karen O'Keefe is also talking about. Aaron bleeping Rodgers, whose absence at mandatory minicamp for whatever reason. I've heard it speculated that he's on vacation and that he was just trying to be away from football right now. Royal Wright says, what will Derrick Henry's season be with a new team and a real offense? That's the NFL line. Well, Roy, to your point, has Derrick ever been covered this much nationally? Because he said, and he's talking more from a football standpoint, about Lamar Jackson. He made some comments today. It's nice to not be or at least at some point this week, about how nice it was to not be the center of attention. And what he's talking about is not be the center of attention for a defense, because he's had to be the center of attention since A.J. Brown got traded away for an opposing NFL defense. He's talking specifically about Lamar, to be in the same backfield with Lamar. But I do think that there has been more Derrick Henry coverage now than there has been at any point in an offseason of his career, other than the year that he broke 2,000 yards in 2020. But even then, I hate to say that it feels a bit lost, because it's not. He's in the history books forever. He's one of 8 players to have ever eclipsed 2,000 yards rushing in a game. But what I mean by that is having it take place during the COVID season in front of such tiny crowds, such tiny live audiences, it's hard, I think, to resonate quite the same way, even as you all witnessed Derrick Henry rush for 2,000 yards, and I witnessed Derrick Henry rush for 2,000 yards. I think I said in a game, I meant a season. Thank you, Aunt Herndon. I appreciate the correction. I do think that that there has been more, at least I've seen more Derrick headlines from other people that aren't here this offseason than I can remember at any point in time. But, maybe I'm just prisoner of the moment because it is a big deal for him to move on from the Titans after 8 years. He is a bona fide NFL legend. Whether he's going to be a Hall of Fame player or not remains to be seen. I think that there is a lot to look at, a lot to like about the situation, not a lot to like about the situation. I got caught up in my, I lost my train of thought there exactly. But you understand my point that the Derrick Henry stuff has never been louder because it's a huge deal for him to leave Tennessee after 8 seasons, to go to Baltimore, who's also contending for a Super Bowl. They're probably the second best team in the AFC after the Kansas City Chiefs. So it does feel like there's a little louder conversation around Derrick Henry in the offseason right now. Now, what is going to be the biggest discussion point in the NFL offseason? Quarterbacks typically carry the day. So who are the quarterbacks who are in the news cycle right now? Well, obviously there's Aaron Rodgers. There's also Dak Prescott, who has a contract situation, a weird contract situation going on with the Dallas Cowboys, and is kind of has all the leverage at his disposal. But for me, I think one headline in particular is going to be worth paying attention to, and that's Tua Tagovailoa's contract. He's talked about being antsy. He's talked about being a little on edge about the fact that he's the only quarterback from his draft class who's not on a second contract yet. And Miami, who won the AFC East last year and who we did a whole podcast on today because we're doing an off-season preview of every NFL team with Greg Cosell and, specific to teams on the Titans schedule. You'll hear a lot of that as a part of the analysis as well, how they might match up as we work our way through. But we started the off-season previews with Miami today. So Tua's contract situation is going to be one of the biggest NFL storylines. One, because he's a polarizing figure. Is it the player? Is it the scheme? Or in reality, is it both together? And that's something that Greg and I talked about today.
Is they use motion, Buck, more than any team in the NFL by a wide margin. So very often, the motion isn't necessarily the receiver who's going to get the ball, although Tyreek Hill, I think at 118 of his targets, and I think he had maybe 170, 180 targets, he was the one in motion. So, but the point of motion as well is motion expands the defense horizontally. And that then creates windows, because if the defense starts to expand horizontally, there's more space inside. So that's where Mike McDaniel, with his such extensive use of motion, far more, let's say, than the Niners, who still are a heavy motion team, but McDaniel has really expanded the deployment of motion, and that really helps to create those windows that really define the throws for Tua. And he has such as I said, such an innate feel and natural understanding of some of those throws. If I would have stopped the tape as he's starting his delivery, Buck, and then you were sitting with me, and I'd say, hey, he's going to throw it to Hill. Hill hasn't even begun his break yet, and it looks like Tua's throwing it right to the underneath defender. That's what he's really, really good at. But you made a great point, and it's worth exploring. The idea of scheme and quarterback. There's the way a lot of coaches look at quarterbacks as they evaluate them even coming out of college is, yes, one, can he play within the scheme effectively, but can he also play outside of structure? Because there's a feeling that is becoming more and more essential in the league. That's not Tua's game. Tua is a rhythm timing player. He's got incredibly quick feet on his drop. He's got a really compact delivery. His ball placement in the short to intermediate area. And as I said, he throws a great fade ball, is really good, and maybe as good as any quarterback in the league throwing those kinds of throws. But he doesn't give you much beyond that. And I don't want that to be a negative statement. I'm saying he can't really make outside of structure plays. Now, he'll make a couple. Every quarterback does, but that's not really his game. He's not going to really beat you.
So that is Greg Cosell talking today about Tua Tagovailoa from the latest episode of The Install with Greg Cosell that is, again, available on the 104.5 The Zone YouTube channel. So I think whether Tua gets $50 million plus this year is going to be one of the biggest headlines of the offseason. Aaron Rodgers probably going to take up a lot of the TMZ news cycle, but I think to an extent there is a bit of Aaron Rodgers fatigue. Anyway, rising and falling. Let's get to whose stock rose, whose stock fell this week in sports. We'll talk about it together right after I remind you that the Primetime program is presented by the place that always keeps your real estate stock rising. That's the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Don't sell without the intel that only the official real estate agent of the Nashville Predators can provide to you at GaryAshton.com. Whose stock rose, whose stock fell this week in sports? Right now, Dallas trending in the right direction, trying to rebound after a 2-0 hole against the Boston Celtics. 25-19 right now with 3:04 to play in the first quarter. Boston leading the series, like I said, 2-0. So you've got the Mavericks who are looking for a little bit of stock up. They have been trending in the wrong direction. Tonight, their stock seems to be a bit on the rise. Better performance from Kyrie, at least right now, and they need more consistency from Kyrie right now. WNBA can't get out of their own way, says Caleb Meadows. Talking about stock down. I haven't seen, is there new news other than Caitlin Clark's, I don't think it's a snub to leave her off the Olympic team. I know some people have been talking about it as if it's one, but I haven't seen any new news relative to the WNBA, so perhaps I've missed something. MB says the Edmonton Oilers falling. Yes, absolutely. You can't come in here with Connor McDavid, have one of the most electric offenses in the sport, and then have the goal output or lack thereof that they had through the first two games. Now, credit, I want to say it's Sergei Bobrovsky is the goaltender for the Florida Panthers, who's been just excellent through the first two games. But to the point of MB, there's a lot of pressure on the Edmonton Oilers for Canada to win the Stanley Cup, how much more important hockey is to them than it is to us, and it's been quite some time since the Edmonton Oilers were this kind of good with this kind of player, right? For those of you who remember the Gretzky days. So Panthers rising, says Jonathan Caverly. Oilers falling. I agree with that as well. My stock up, I would say, there's a couple. Stock up Joey Chestnut, who got banned from the Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest on July 4th, only to announce a Netflix live event eating special with him and Kobayashi. So he's going to get paid and he's going to get the exposure that he wants, and he's going to be able to dominate. Well, we'll see against Kobayashi, who is, of course, the other most famous name in professional eating. I would say for him, taking a bad situation that looked like it might be stock down and turning it into a stock up type deal is absolutely the case. Also trending upwards like he needs it is Tom Brady, who officially today got Tom Brady Day made official in Boston to this soundtrack courtesy of John Cena.
Tom Brady. Poor build, skinny, lacks great physical stature and strength, and gets knocked down easily.
That kind of gets me fired up. The hell do these people know?
Who is this guy? Dismissed, unknown, and underestimated. Clearly, they couldn't see him.
He looked me eye to eye and he said, "I'm the best decision this organization has ever made."
I always felt like once I get my shot, I'm going to be ready.
Bledsoe taken out, and Brady has been put into quarterback.
Who is this guy? The one whose heart could not be measured. The one whose drive outshined the rest.
What Tom Brady just did gives me goosebumps.
The Patriots are Super Bowl champions!
Who is this guy? The one who overcame the obstacles. The man who, when pressured and pinned, let it all loose.
We are not finished!
A genuine leader. The man who saw the very best in his peers, rallied them, and led them to the pinnacle. Time and time and time and time and time and time again. The man who holds more records than any other player in the NFL. The one who thought his best win was the next one. The leader, the anchor, the son, the father. He's kept us breathless, defining what it means to be a champion.
You're the greatest quarterback in the world, man.
And now, this. A legacy enshrined forever in the Patriot way.
I am a Patriot for life.
So, who is this guy?
He's Tom Brady, the greatest of all time, and we love him for it.
It's pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good, that Tom Brady guy. So that's courtesy of the Patriots. Tom Brady's Patriots Hall of Fame enshrinement. Hopefully it will cause less controversy than Mike Vrabel's Patriots Hall of Fame enshrinement, which sounds like it was one of the biggest reasons why the Titans were butthurt and fired Mike Vrabel, among several other reasons that were justifiable to fire Mike Vrabel. All right, that's going to do it for us tonight on the Primetime program. We appreciate you guys hanging out. Tomorrow on the radio show, we have a lot of different things going on for you. We're going to take a look at the most compelling division in the NFL. So make sure you hang out with us. Corey Curtis of WKRN is going to be in studio. Always good to have CC, and I'm sure he has some Titans thoughts. So 10-1 on 104.5 The Zone. Make sure you subscribe to the 104.5 The Zone YouTube channel. Check out the latest episode of The Install if you want to get the down low on all the NFL teams starting today with our offseason preview of the Miami Dolphins, another Titans opponent, the Titans' only primetime opponent in 2024. Stephen King says, thanks for staying late, Buck. You're the best. Well, you guys are the best. Since you guys were riding with me, I figured we'd do a longer show. Sometimes we, it just depends on your attention span. If I feel like I got you for a minute, then yeah, we can hang. That's how this thing works. Always appreciate you guys spending your evening here with us. Make sure you like this video on your way out the door, and I'll talk to you tomorrow at 10 a.m. on 104.5 The Zone.
Go home! Go home! Go home! You're embarrassing Nashville! Go home!